Hey everyone. So, I guess I'm gonna make a video about this discourse about transmedicalism and uh, and detransitioning. And I know that this is gonna be pretty contentious because I don't know, for some reason I keep encountering more and more uh, discussions about these two topics, right? And I wanted to give y'all like my perspective and my experience with transmedicalism and detransitioning. So, without further ado, for the record, I'm non-binary. I go by they them pronouns, right? And I want to argue that I feel like the trans medical community, I think they think that being exclusionary and thinking that like, oh, you need to have dysphoria to be trans and all this talk, they think that if they do stuff like that, that they're going to prevent cis people from transitioning. Like they're gonna stop like detransition and stuff like that. But I would actually argue that transmedicalism inadvertently makes people detransition. So me myself, I used to have this kind of mindset. I thought like, no, there are only two genders. Like, you have to have dysphoria to be trans. If you don't, then you're just a faker, and you're making the trans community look bad and crazy, right? So, when I was questioning my gender, right, I thought that like I had to identify as a trans man, right? Uh, but and also if I wanted to be a trans man, I had to go all the way, right? Like I had to go on hormones, I had to do top surgery, I had to be all masculine man and all that crap, right? And when I did, like go out as a guy, right? Honestly, that freaked me out because, like, I don't know, it was like as if the trans medical community was like pushing me to like get on hormones, get top surgery, maybe even get bottom surgery. You have to act like this, you have to act like that, or else you're making the community look bad. Oh, and also you cannot be non-binary because like there are only two genders. There's only like man and female. All right, if you don't fit into those things, then you're just then you're gonna make us look bad, right? And like for me, even though that I had that kind of thinking, right, I felt like I was just, you see, like for me myself, I have problems with like getting validation and approval, especially like from like higher people, right? Because that's just how I was raised, that's just how I was taught. If I don't get validation and approval from other people, then I'm not worth anything, you know. And I had such low self-esteem. And when I did experiment being a man and stuff like that, that just freaked me out because it was just so restrictive, and just like the pressure to like desire 100% of the hormone effects, like I had to go all the way, right? Or else I wasn't truly trans. I wasn't trans enough, right? And like, yeah, like that means you're just crazy and you're making the community look bad. And, you know, like, when I was like trying to experiment being a man, I freaked out. So I went back to being a woman, right? Because I felt like a failure. I felt like, ah, shit, like, I did this and I fucking failed. So I just went back to being a woman because I just felt like there was no other space to go to. If I was so uncomfortable being a man, then I might as well just stay a woman, right? That means I'm not a true trans person, right? But even when I went back to being a woman, I felt just as uncomfortable. I was just as miserable as I was, you know, before. It didn't change anything. It didn't do anything. And, you know, I still felt like shit. It actually took a really, really, really long time, and I had to get out of the transmedical community so I can finally be free and be myself, right? I just felt like the transmedical community was like super extra pushing me and pressuring me to like transition in their way, right? Like, and to act, you know, their way, and to feel dysphoria their way, right? It wasn't about me, you know. And when it comes to transition, it cannot be about other people. You cannot transition because you're trying to get other people's approval. No, you have to transition for yourself, right? It took a couple of, I don't know, I guess years for me to just finally accept that, like, no, I'm non-binary. I don't want testosterone. I don't want the effects of that, but I do want top surgery. But I don't want testosterone. But guess what? That doesn't make me any less trans, right? Like, the thing about the transmedical community is that, like, they don't leave enough space, right, for you to just kind of think and, you know, kind of experiment a little bit. Because if you do, then they'll just say, you're not trans enough, you're making us look bad, you're making us look crazy, right? And me, personality wise, I don't like that. I don't like being told what to do, all right? Like, I had to deal with that when I was a kid, you know, like people like bullying me, criticizing me for not being girly enough, you know, saying shit like, why are you acting like that? You should be more girly because you look better when you are prettier when you are girly and stuff like that. And I fucking hate that, right? I don't like rules. I don't like people telling me what to do, all right? And that's the thing. Like they think that, like, if they exclude like non-binary people and like binary people who don't transition or just don't transition in, you know, their way, that they think that they are preventing people from detransitioning. But when I read a lot of these like detransition stories, I don't know, some of them sound like maybe they were trans. It's just that medical transition was just not for them. Now, there are a lot of detransition stories that state that they detransitioned because of like the social baggage that comes with transitioning, right? But there are other transition stories, you know, that are like, hey, like hormones gave me bad mental health issues. I guess maybe I'm not trans. I didn't like it, right? Or, you know, no, I actually like the hormones and stuff, but maybe surgery wasn't for me, right? But that's the thing. It's like, just because like you liked some of the effects and you didn't like the other effects, maybe that doesn't necessarily mean you're not trans. Maybe it just means that, like, the way that you transitioned wasn't the correct way, right? I don't know, because there are some detransition stories that sound like maybe hormones were not for them, but top surgery was for them, right? To be honest, if I was still in the trans medical community, I probably, I mean, who knows? Maybe I would have caved into, like, their pressure, and maybe I would have taken, hormones and probably detransitioned. I don't know, right? And that's the thing, like I don't know, it just seems like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Y'all think that, like, excluding non-binary people and other trans people who don't transition in your way is going to prevent people from detransitioning, but I would argue it does the exact opposite, because you're not giving people enough space to kind of just breathe, and just look at their options. Like, and also, you don't have to medically transition to be trans, all right? Like, this isn't a race. This isn't like it's not, it shouldn't be a club, right? And, like, not everyone's story is going to be 100% the same. And, like, we need to be more open, to other ways of transitioning, right? And honestly, like, me looking at, like, and watching, like, non-binary people's videos and, non-transitioning, like, trans people videos, those helped me way more than transmedicalist videos. I don't know, it just seems that, like, transmedicalism is, like, pretty exclusionary, and when it's exclusionary, it just turns a little bit toxic and weird, and just, it doesn't leave a good feeling inside me. So that's why I had to get out, and actually search for more stories so that, like, I know exactly who I am and what routes is right for me. So, and I finally determined that, like, top surgery is for me. I've been thinking about it, right? I've watched a lot of videos, I read a lot of stories, and I'm like, yeah, I think top surgery is for me. But when it comes to testosterone, I don't think that's for me. But guess what? That does not make me any less trans, right? And even if I didn't want top surgery, that also doesn't make me any less trans than the next person, right? So that's all I gotta say.